And it's just so wonderful to see everybody here. And here's Ruth Ann, our president.
I needed someone to start it. Good. Gosh, it's so exciting. It's really overwhelming. Well, wait a minute till those people are getting seated, but while they're all being seated, I have a few announcements to make.
JB.
We are thrilled. Absolutely. If I could have your attention, I know you're all excited. Your many friends, old, let's say friends you've seen before. Oh, well, it's always yelling. Oh, is that better? Where's too far? Pardon me? Is this all right? Okay. Can you hear me a little last week? It's okay? Louder? I can talk as loud as you want. No problem. That's my husband. All right. I'm Ruth Andrus. I'm president of Dallas Jewish Historical Society. Thrilled to see this group tonight. I have a few announcements, which I'll find right here. One, of course, I know is that we are, as you say, working the crowd, because you are the crowd. You are the people that have really developed Dallas from South Dallas to North Dallas to now. So we really need you to become members of our organization. We invite you to. So I have been working the crowd, as has Ginger, and she's ahead of me. She always has a return envelope with a check in it. So feel free to do that tonight. And really, you know, we have this program, and it's open to the public, but we really do need your involvement besides. And that, I wondered, how many of you heard of it? How did you hear about it? Did you see it in the Dallas Morning News? Raise your hand at the religious section under the calendar. A few. Okay, what other way? Did you get a yellow flyer? Yeah. Oh, well, then those are our members. Thank you very much. That went to you. If you heard it from a friend, brought you here, dragged you here. Great. Okay, so just think, when you become a member, you'll get to be one of those people who gets the yellow flyers, and you'll know all about all of our programs. You won't just come for South Dallas, okay? All right. And I think some of you you've had some of the other wonderful programs. We are also inviting you to invest in our donation card, which have history. They have a picture of the Freeman drugstore. And Josie's back there, our executive director, Josie Ackerman, is here with them. You get 3 for $10. Here's the photo, and on the back you can send it it has a lovely message, and it can either be in honor of, in memory of, happy birthday. You write it, whatever you want. People are thrilled to receive this, and we are thrilled to have you use it so we can add to our exposure, add to everything that is historical. We have journals back there that you get, and we have enough that if you aren't a member, of course when you join you'll get one, but this is the one, a new one's being formed, so you can take that old one back there. It's this journal. It's back there. Okay. We have Ruthie Weingarten here today, who is in Dallas. She has written a new book, which we just bought, but I won't see it. Hold it up, Dave. It's called what? Capital Women. And we have 4 Texas women, one of whom is Dallas, Florence Shapiro. And so she has some back there. We would love it. She would be happy for you to see. Stand up, Ruthie, so we can honor you, please, wherever you are. There you are, all the way from Austin, Texas. Good scholar. Thank you, Ruthie. Okay, it's my pleasure to introduce Nancy Lugar, who will introduce this wonderful program. Before I do it, are you people without chairs? All right. Did someone back there? Would you men come up here and we'll just lift these chairs and you'll be right here in the front row. Can I get the people on the side to come up to the front, please? Hello? Don't be shy. Come on. They don't know what can you do? So we're happy you're here, you're cozy, you're next to friends, and so if you pay attention, you will have everything right told to you personally. Hold on, please.
I think we're going to have a part 2 of this program. I want to first thank my program committee for helping put this together. Annette Jason, Doris Bergman, Sherry Zander, Karen Prager, and of course our panel members. Sherry also put together the collage of pictures you saw that I hope you'll come see after. The idea for this program originally came from one of our panel members, Frances Golman, who thought a program on what it was like growing up in earlier times in Dallas would make a fascinating topic. After a good deal of discussion, our program committee chose the title Life in the Dallas Shtetl. In the book, Life is with People by Zborowski and Herzog, the Shtetl is described as the stronghold of Jewish culture, where Jews, no matter what their origin, retain their ways and their language, responding to the environment, assimilating much of it and integrating it into their way of life, yet keeping the core of their tradition intact. Rabbi Stern of Temple Emmanuel sent the following write-up on the Shtetl. Though Jews are usually thought of as city people, most American Jews trace their ancestry to the small villages and towns of Eastern Europe, known in Yiddish as Shtetl, our singular Shtetl. Most of us think of the Shtetl through the romanticized depiction of Anatevka, the musical Fiddler on the Roof. While it has become common for Jews to speak of the Shtetl life nostalgically, the reality was that most Jews who lived in the Shtetl were very poor and fled to America by the millions in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. As poverty-ridden as the Shtetl were, however, their communal life was characterized by the extraordinary sense of responsibility that inhabitants felt for each other. Either one gave charity for those in need or one received it. No one was allowed to be indifferent to the poor. The Jews in the Shtetl took care of each other. From the stories I have heard of the Jews who lived in Dallas in the early part of the 20th century, it was the same as in the old countries. People took care of each other. No matter how poor they were, there was always room at the dinner table for one more. We're going to start our program with Frances Garber. Everyone who meets Frances Garber knows that she is a very special woman. At 93 years of age, her memory is incredible, her knowledge of early Dallas is extensive, and to talk with her is a privilege. Her words are so carefully thought out and filled not only with wisdom, but with superb logic and common sense. When Frances grew up in Dallas, she was good friends with a couple of my aunts. And now, many years later, I also am very fortunate to have her as my good friend. Frances was born on May 3rd, 1906 in Dallas, Texas to Ida and David Wolfe. The family moved to Dallas because their doctor had said her brother Morris needed a warmer climate. Frances went to Colonial Royal Street Grade School. For her first year in Sunday school, she went to Temple Emmanuel because Sherith Israel did not yet have a Sunday school. She attended Hebrew school on Jackson Street near the farmer's market. Her teacher, Mr. Weinstein, spoke only Yiddish. Frances graduated from Forest Avenue High School in 1923 and attended the Metropolitan Business College. Her first position was with General Motors Trucking Company. In 1925, she went to work for Chef's Bakery until it was sold to Purity Bakery in 1930. And then she worked for the Oak Cliff Baking Company, owned by Jake and Julius Golman. Frances met Harry Garber, her husband, in 1943 while calling on a friend, and they married in 1949. Frances has been doing volunteer work in the community for over 60 years. She was declared Woman of the Year by AMC in 1970, She is written in the State of Israel Bond Scroll of Honor. For Hadassah, she has covered the waterfront, holding nearly every position available. Every week for the last 30 years, she has been a reading tutor at Preston Hollow. Sherith Israel counts her as one of its most loyal volunteers, and the Dallas Jewish Historical Society could not possibly exist without her constant encouragement and willingness to help in every way possible. In addition to her helping of others, Frances continues her love of learning and gets great joy from going to Torah class every Saturday morning. Now it's a great pleasure for me to introduce you to Frances Garber.
Erwin. Tell me about if the mic is situated somewhere. We, my family, and I, Raven, tell me, okay, better? Yeah. Talk into the mic, okay? I have to take my lessons. We moved from Bellevue Street, where we had lived for a number of years and where I was born, to Park Row in 1925. I was about 20 years old at the time. And there were many, many Jewish families already living on Park Row at that time. The reason we moved is that the area, that we moved to that area was that Forest Avenue was the mecca for Jewish supply outlets, kosher markets, bakeries, drugstores, anything you needed in the Jewish line was on Forest Avenue, including Forest High. That was also a place for Jewish children. The fact that there were all of these outlets was important to us. In the 2400 and 2500 block of Park Road were the Morris Avalons, Meyer Avalon, two Levine families, Morris Rubin, the Rubinettes, is Norman here tonight? Norman Rubinette? No? Okay. The Oxman family, is Tilly here? No, I'm myself.
I'm here.
Jacob's family, the Chesnick family, the Jacobs clan. This is the Jacobs clan, Abe Jacobs from Greenville, Texas. They also had moved over on Park Road. And I must say that Abe Jacobs became really a stalwart at the Sheriff Israel Synagogue because he was responsible for the morning minyan for years and years at Sheriff Israel. In fact, there is a plaque for him in the chapel at Sheriff Israel. I wish that all of you had known him. He was a wonderful person. The Barron family also lived on Park Row, and when they moved, their home became the Dallas Hebrew School, and remained the Dallas Hebrew School for a number of years until it moved into the Hershey the United, and that was also known as the Hershey Hebrew School. It was on Peabody, and remained that way for a number of years also. The children, all of the children who lived on Park Row were friendly and compatible. They visited in the yards, in the streets, at the Hebrew school, and at public school. Norman Rubinette and Tilly Kringler were Park Row kinder. They were younger than the other children. Most of the children became teenagers and made lasting friendships, including Tilly's family, the Rubinette family, Barry Friedman, Meyer Ablin and his children, and in the summer, there was a family called Summers. What was her name? Bill and thank you. Bill and Esther Summer and their children, and the Engelberg clan. That was my sister's family. She had 5 children in her. In the summer, the place was busy with children visiting or playing or going to Hebrew school. I recall Joe Erwin Rubinette. Do you remember him? Sure. Joe Erwin Rubinette. He was about 6 years old. Poor little thing. He was the youngest in the family, and his mother went into their business, left every day to go into their business, and they had a housekeeper. But at that time, you just roamed the streets, nobody worried about anything happening to you, and poor little Joe Erwin just wandered from one house to the other, and everybody would ask him, "And you want a drink, Joe Herman?" "Yeah." So goodness knows what his stomach was full like that. You know, he was something else. Everybody invited him in for a drink. No one was concerned that he was alone. We knew he was well off and he would go home when he wanted to. Joe Herman he really was a sweet little boy. Once in a while, the summer, that was the family summer daughter, would get in a fight with the Ablin children. That always added spice to the day. Always loved that. I want to say that Nathan Osman, Tilly's brother, had a part-time job and was able to buy a car. He was the envy of the neighborhood. You could feel the esteem that the other children had for Nathan because he had a car. Every teenager prayed that they would be like Nathan. My other evaluation is the number of houses of worship that were in the neighborhood at that time. Temple Emmanuel on South Boulevard, Sheriff Israel on Park Road, Tiferet Israel on Grand Avenue, and the Goodis Achim on Forest Avenue. There was also a Romanian school on Park Road that remained active just a short time. Somebody mentioned something else over here.
No, I just mentioned the show. I don't know that.
Oh, okay. It was a Romanian shul. I was going to say your father. I don't remember your father going into that. I have a picture in my mind of Erwin Waldman's father walking into that shul. This was on Park Road. Dallas, the Jewish population of Dallas may have been 10 or 15,000 at that time. I do not know. But considering the fact that there were just the 10 or 15,000, I think it is remarkable that we had that number of houses of worship. I recall that since then, a census was taken when we moved into this area here, and the population was between 25 and 30,000. And today it is estimated to be close to 50,000, the Jewish population, close to be 50,000. On Friday afternoon, one could inhale the wonderful aroma of the filter fish. There were no commercial jars of the filter fish at that time. And you knew you were in a Jewish neighborhood. And on Yom Tov, it was a gourmet's delight. We walked to shul, and after lunch, we watched from the front porch friends visiting other friends. That's what we did on Yucca. I cannot speak for South Boulevard or Forest Avenue or Holmes Street. Pennsylvania, Peabody, Irby Street, that was where George Smith's family lived, or Sango Avenue, where the Donskis and Friedmans lived. But my Shtetl was 2400 and 2500 Park Road. And I am sure that the interest and closeness which was evident then is one of my fondest memories. I would wish that all children would have memories of friends and closeness and fun in their youth. It seems as if life can be good and life is good, and this gives one complete satisfaction in their golden years. Thank you.
We'll be having questions and answers at the end, so you'll get a chance to ask questions of our wonderful family members. One of my favorite memories of my early teenage years was going to dinner at Frances and Joe Herman Golman's. Joe Herman would take me aside and say, "Nancy, everyone is upset about," and then he'd mention whatever was the hottest political topic of the day, usually segregation. Then Joe would say, "I'm going to bring up the subject at dinner, then I'm going to ask you for your opinion, and whatever everyone else is for, you take a strong position for the opposite side." As you can guess, dinners at the Goldmans were very lively. Often no one would speak to me at the end. Frances Goldman always insists her claim to fame was as the wife of Joe Herman Golman, as the mother of their 4 children, Julie Melindy, John David, Edward, Tim, and Josh, as the grandmother of 9 wonderful grandchildren, and as the creator of the best chocolate cake in the world. What she forgets to mention is her own renowned reputation, not only as a volunteer, but as hostess to the hundreds of meetings that Joe Herman had during his many years of public service. He always insisted everyone meet at his house for dinner, so Frances could cook. She became adept at fixing impromptu dinners for up to 60 people or more. Frances was born in Dallas in 1923 to Sophie and Simon Goodman. Her brother Jack died in 1988. She has a sister, Mimi Goodman Aronoff. Frances attended John Henry Brown Elementary School, graduated from Forest Avenue High in 1941. She attended the University of Colorado in SMU. At 20, in 1943, she married the boy next door, Joe Herman Golman, whose mother, Esther Goldman, was Frances' mother's, Sophie Goodman's, best friend. At 23, Frances became the president of a Goodasakan Ladies Auxiliary, because her mother told her it was her duty. She went on to become active in the Sheriff Israel Sisterhood, the PTAs of Dealey and Hockaday, the Texas A&M Mothers Club, the Women of the Rotary, and she served on the Status for Women Commission for the city of Dallas. One of the things she's proudest of is her work for Miss Rocky. When she was 30, her mother, Sophie Goodman, organized the first Miss Rocky Women's chapter in Dallas. Frances became president, fundraiser, and chief cook and bottle washer. She has been active in Miss Rocky for over 40 years and has served on the National Board and the National Speakers Bureau. I'm very pleased to introduce you to Frances Goldman.
Joe's name so many times, I wouldn't know that she was talking about me. When Nancy and I first talked about this some months ago, we discussed various subjects and how we would go about doing this.
And we decided to have a panel. Nancy did. I didn't know I was going to be on the panel, but here I am. First, I want to start by saying, Martin. Everybody in this room who knew me when I was a young girl, raise your hand. Everybody who is my cousin, raise your hand. When we talked about the different subjects, the one that Nancy gave me seemed boring and uninteresting. About the butcher shops, and I'll give you a few statistics. But I asked her yesterday, Nancy, can I be last? And she said no. Erwin Waldman has to be last. And I didn't think that was fair. The actor, a wonderful woman of our community, Frances Garber, and before, a prestigious, intelligent intellectual whom I do not know that. And so this afternoon around 4:30, I decided that my days of public speaking are certainly well over, and I had better make a few notes about some of the things that I would like to speak about and reminisce about. I may not be too coherent, but it'll be true. As Nancy told you, I was born in Dallas. I am 76 years old, and like my mother, I want to say, don't ask me how much I weigh. I don't know how I went to the University of Colorado. I was the only girl from my group that went out of state to college. But when the war came, my dad wanted me to come back home, and so I went to SMU. I want to talk a little bit about living on South Boulevard, because, Frances, probably, from what you say, the more religious Jews lived on Park Road. I think on South Boulevard we had more Reformed Jews. There was no conservative Jews in those years. I transgressed to tell you I had experience in anti-Semitism once when I was at the University of Colorado, and I was at an exchange dance, and the young man I was dancing with said, from the boys' dormitory, said, "I hate Jews, don't you?" I can still feel the blood just drain out of me. And I said, "I'm Jewish," and turned around and walked away. The other instance just happened about 10 days ago, and the lady was Jewish. She said she had heard that the name of this Dallas Jewish Historical Society program was called, and she said it like this: the name of the program is the Shtetl. She couldn't even say it. And I proceeded to explain to her what that meant. Well, she said, "We're not coming." She also told me she was not affiliated with any temple or synagogue. And so when I don't see her here tonight, I feel free to tell this story. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the social life of the Jewish people in South Dallas. And I see a lot of you socialites out there. And at an early age, I became interested in the theater. And I produced plays in my backyard. And we charged 10 cents a person. We made $11, and the Dallas Times-Herald put our picture in the paper. And we did that several times. We had really good news coverage. We gave the money to the Red Cross. All through the years, I took every lesson that was available. Piano lessons for 7 years. Can't play a note. I love music. I took speech and drama. I always wanted to be an anatomies, and I really still want to be. I took elocution, and every Thursday at 4 o'clock, I participated in a program, a radio program in the Woods Building downtown. You remember where that is? Well, the building is not there any longer, but I'm here. I was president of the Girls Public Speaking Club at Forest Avenue High School. And Evelyn Oppenheimer, who you all know of, was my mentor and installed me as president, and we were friends throughout the years. I participated and was active, as were most of the girls at that time, in the Young Judeas. We went to conventions in San Antonio and Beaumont, and Houston and Galveston. Carol's mother, Sally Berner, was at the conventions. Most of them, I don't know. How about Harold? Were you at any of those conventions or Salvar's in?
I went a lot before you.
Well, you were before me a lot. My family attended the Avitas Optimum Synagogue because we moved from Maple Avenue, which was a very prestigious location, to South Boulevard because my parents wanted the children to be in a Jewish neighborhood with Jewish children. At that time, we were playing with Mayor Bradford's son, who they lived across the street from us, and the Walkers, where the St. Germain Hotel is. Now, I used to play in that house when I was 5 years old with Frances Wolfe. And so we moved to a beautiful house at 2711 South Boulevard. And Louis Wadle, who was here, his grandparents, that was their home. I loved dancing. I took dancing lessons. I took jazz and ballet at Temple Emmanuel from Marjorie Lepanovich, who is still living, and other teachers, Coslow, who went to Hollywood, but he didn't take me with him. I took a modern dance class at the University of Colorado, and I loved it until I fell down the stairs, and that was the end of my dancing career. Our childhood, my family, was spent in a beautiful 2-story house filled with oriental rugs, handsome furniture, a grand piano. My parents were very young at that time. My mother was 28 years old. They were very giving and hardworking and generous people. My mother helped other people in so many ways. I married Joe H. Goldman in 1943 at a small, intimate wedding in a crystal ballroom at the Baker Hotel. About 600 guests. Joanne Rubenstein, I saw your picture there. You were not invited. You were a little girl, 10 years old. I saw the picture the other day. Everybody brought their kindred. They all brought their After Joe's Army service, he had a place to live, and his grandfather's home, and who had passed away, was on Park Road, down the street from Francis. And so we had the people move, and we moved into that house. It was a frame cottage, and across the street lived Louis, that was his name, Louis Eagle. He was a city Eagle. The councilman. And there are so many memories in South Dallas. Our oldest 2 children, Julie and John David, were born when we lived there. And we moved to North Park in 19, I don't remember when, I guess about 53. Joe entered politics for a short time, from about 1945 till about 1990. I spent my maturing years doing the usual wife-mother things, including, as Nancy told you, my years with Ms. Rocky Women, speaking on behalf and raising funds for 22,000 children, and that has been the most rewarding experience of my life. But enough about me. Let's talk about what Nancy asked me to talk about. So, in the summer, what she said, what did the children do? Well, in the summer, we played outside under the big sycamore trees. In the cold of the rain, we played inside in our big attic or on our glass-in back porch. Where I live at Ruthina, they call that porch the terrace. We listened to the radio, and we cried listening to the First Nighters. Do you remember that? First Nighters? In the neighborhood, South Boulevard, everybody knew everybody. And as well as I can remember, we were all Jewish. And at one time, I could have told you everybody that lived on both sides of the street of South Boulevard, but I don't think that's so important anymore. And so I'm not going to try to recall that. We were all Jewish, Reform and Orthodox, because there was no conservative. We didn't hear much about intermarriage in those days, unless you want to call Reformed Jews married to safe on the streets, on the streetcars, at the movies, at the state fair, at Kidd Springs, at Lake Cliff. My family belonged to the Dallas Athletic Club, where I went every Saturday with my girlfriend, Betty Jane David. Her grandfather was the original Simon David. We went down there and we went swimming and we had lunch, and either her brother Stanley or my brother Jack picked us up and took us to White Rock, where we went horseback riding for an hour, and we had lots of fun. As teenagers, we had parties at the Plantation Club, lunch at Peacock Terrace to the music of Ted Fiorito and Joe Ryder. We were shocked, we did good deeds, and the children of the neighborhood were all friendly in their respective age brackets. As we got to be older teenagers, we went to the mural room and to the Century Room, and we had fun and games. And then came World War II. It was so remote until our brothers and neighbors were drafted and some were killed. Our handsome young man just across the street, Jack Miller, the son of Henry Miller, Sr. Our cousin George Golman was a prisoner during the war. I think I have a picture. There's a picture when he came back to Dallas. Jack Miller was killed on active duty. Life didn't seem so much fun anymore, or so full. There was food stamps and gas rationing, and some small sacrifices that we all made. South Dallas was such a small spot on the globe, but it was our home. On Forest Avenue, there were 2 butchers, 1 butcher on Colonial, 3 kosher bakeries, and Schlinger's Grocery, and a force owned by 2 sisters who were Jewish. Their name escapes me. Robinson on the Oakland, Phil Siegel, Charlie and Frank Siegel on Forest and Colonial, and Freeman's on Grand Avenue. There was Temple Emmanuel on South Boulevard, the Good Asacham on Forest Avenue, and Sheriff Israel on Park Avenue, and the Romanian Shore on Park Road. We all walked everywhere we went. We walked to the fairgrounds, we walked downtown. I met my cousin who lived on Ackerd Street. We'd walk up and meet each other, past Park School, which was a tough school, we were safe. Nothing ever happened to us. At elementary school, John Henry Brown School, the teachers were not allowed to be married. At Forest Avenue High School, we had our first male teacher. At Forest Avenue High School, Frances Garber's sister, Jenny Blumenthal, was in charge of the study hall. I don't believe there were any Jewish teachers in those days.
She's also in charge of me.
In elementary school, almost everybody went home for lunch. I cut through the alley, which wasn't allowed, but I did it anyway. And at Forest, the Shackman brothers and Sal and Dave Kaplan and the boys who lived too far away came to our house on South Boulevard and had lunch during Passover. Once during a rainstorm, a whole party of boys and girls, 14 and 15 years old, were reined in, and we had to spend the night at the home of Bernice Cohen, Sal's cousin. The boys were in one room and the girls were in another room, and you can believe it. And times had really changed. Joe and I and his cousin Adeline Harrison, Adeline Nathanson then, played tennis at City Park. That is, they played tennis and I read a book. Some of us bicycled out to White Rock Lake. We picnicked a lot. We had family picnic and dates. We went on picnics, and we double dated Redden Coleman and his wife Frances and Joe and I. The Golman family still has a summer family picnic. There are 100 cousins every summer that get together at a picnic. They all live in Dallas with the exception, I think, of 2. The Goodman family, unfortunately, has gotten very small. Times have changed. There were many beautiful young girls and handsome boys in South Dallas. Parents knew where their kids were at all times. Not too many got in trouble. There's so many memories that I could reminisce all evening. So many highlights in our lives. I remember when Maxine Polikoff moved to Dallas. She was a beautiful girl, and she's a beautiful lady. And when Lena Aftergut made delicious fudge in her house on Peabody, and then she opened a shop downtown. I remember the temple dances. I remember the first time I danced with a reformed boy. I remember my beloved teacher, Rabbi J. Abramowitz, and Rabbi Lefkowitz, who lived down the street, and Rabbi Gold, who was 20 minutes late to our wedding. I recall my family's Sunday ride out to the country, Beltline Road, to the Skiller's Ranch. They were friends of my family. And to the Killingsworth Farm in Plano. Do you remember the Shriners Parade downtown? Do you remember going to see the Trinity River rise down there? Do you remember going over to White Rock and seeing the water flood over the causeway? Do you remember the confirmations at the temple and the synagogues and the graduations from Forest Avenue? And can't you just still smell the rye bread from the Goldman Baking Company out on the street? Or the popcorn at the White Theater? And did you buy a root beer down on Forest Avenue? Or did you buy a woozy root beer from my brother in front of our house on South Boulevard in the stand there? My dad. And did you see Herbie Goldberg chasing his sister Elaine across the street? And did you see my sister Mimi and her girlfriend Marilyn Rudy sitting on the steps in front of the house with Doris Barris and Elaine and Ruthie Levy? Do you remember the boys playing ball on an empty lot 2 doors away from my house until the Ackermans built a house on it? Did you see my my grandmother walking to synagogue on Saturday, and my mother, who was so young, only 32 years old at the time, taking Shabbos dinner to a Jewish family somewhere in Dallas every year as long as I can remember. Can you remember the hot days? What was air conditioned? If you were a young lady, do you remember your first date? Do you remember your first lipstick? Do you remember your first kiss? And if you were a young man, do you remember your bar mitzvah? Do you remember your real man suit? Do you remember your first girlfriend? Somewhere I read that it is good to reminisce in the days gone by, but be sure that you don't dwell there. They say that the golden years of life is at the end of life. And I say, for me, the golden years were in South Dallas. A golden cake, my childhood, my wonderful parents, my family, where my husband and I became sweethearts, and where we married, and where we lived, and where we grew. The icing on the golden cake, 4 devoted children. One son who died at a very young age. 9 beautiful, loving grandchildren. Lifelong friends. Bess Campbell. Zelda Seaver. Martin Livingston, who became cousin. Oh, Beverly. Salvar Zinn. I see so many of you sitting there. And I heard my mother-in-law tell the story of Dave's mother coming to this country, how she was pregnant with Joe, and she went to the Union Station to get Hirachel. I'm sure most of you read her book. And when she said to her, "Do you speak English?" she was so insulted because she spoke 5 languages fluently. That was Dave Anderson's mother. And how about you? Weren't you a part of that community? I remember you, Carol Moore. Didn't you participate in that Shtetl? Did it help shape your life? Did it make you feel good? And doesn't it make you feel good that you belong there? That was your home. That was the beginning of the rest of your life. I was fortunate indeed to be married for 53 years to a big and powerful and wonderful man. And to this date, he is still the man who has given most service to the city of Dallas than any other man in Dallas. My neighbor, Max McKinney, told me that the other day. He served in the Salesmanship Club with him and the Rotary Club. And the post of Deputy Mayor Pro Tem was created just for Joe. He's a pretty good guy, and I think that helped me to be the woman that I am. And I thank you all.
Dr. Morton Prager has achieved many awards over the years for his research and scientific papers. But what he is really known for in my Sunday school generation is the man who taught us to ask why. Those of us who had him for a teacher and listened to him learned never to accept a simplistic answer to our questions. This means you can blame Dr. Prager for teaching us not to keep our mouths shut. As you'll hear later, it's good Erwin Waldman never had him for a teacher. Morton Prager was born in 1927 to William and Elizabeth Prager. He has 1 brother, Jerome, who lives in Dallas, wife, Jackie, 4 children, Karen Prager of Dallas, David of California, Neil of Austin, and Brian of New York. Morton attended John Henry Brown Elementary School on Park Road Forest Avenue High School. He graduated from University of Texas in 1947 and got his PhD from Purdue in 1951. He serves as professor of surgery and biochemistry at UT Southwestern Medical Center. For many years, he has conducted a research program focused on the problems relating to cancer, and more recently, he has conducted research involving traumatic injury and new biomaterials. Dr. Prager has lectured widely across the U.S. and in many foreign countries, including Canada, Mexico, most of Western Europe, Israel, and Japan. He has published more than 100 scientific papers and has delivered a still larger number of oral presentations at national and international scientific meetings. He has held membership in 12 learned scientific societies and has been associate editor of the journal Cancer Research. For many years, Dr. Prager has served as an officer and trustee of Temple Emmanuel. He has been an officer and continues on the board for the Southwest region of UAHC. He serves on the UAHC Bioethics Committee. He serves as a member of the board of ARSA, World Union of North America, and is on the board of WISE Academy. I'm very pleased to present to you Dr. Morton Prager.
And I realized there was going to be so many of you here tonight, I probably would have combed my hair. You've heard a great deal already, and I'm going to be much briefer so that you can get out of here sometime tonight. You've heard that all the synagogues were concentrated in the southern part of the city. That tells you, of course, where the Jews lived. The northernmost synagogue was Shtetl, Israel, which was across from Old City Park. We had always been warned about not spending too much time around that park. There were certain dangers there, and most of us believed it. Now, despite the fact that the Jews lived in South Dallas for the most part, I want to assure you that we were far from a monolithic society or community. There were divisions. Divisions, first of all, which by the synagogue that you attended, because this took you into a certain milieu. But probably even more important than that was the two elementary schools that you've heard mentioned tonight. There was John Henry Brown, and the kids who went there lived on Forest Avenue, South Boulevard, Park Road, and there was the Colonial School, and the kids who lived around Colonial, Wendelken, and so forth. And we really didn't get to know one another until we all began to funnel into Forest Avenue High School. That occurred in the 8th grade because the Dallas Public Schools only had 11 years at that time. So from the 8th through the 11th, we were in high school and we began to know the broader group of Jewish kids. The great emphasis certainly was on those public schools. I knew practically no one at that time, very few in fact, a couple, who went to a private school. The emphasis was on public education. And when you stop and think of what has happened, it's really a pity, because that was one of the great democratizing forces that we all experienced. It brought us into contact not just with our Jewish friends, but with the larger community, and that was extremely important. The synagogues helped with this mixing from the two, what I call the two communities of South Dallas, because they began to have, for the teenagers, social programs, dances, and the boys would float from one to another depending upon where the girls were that particular evening. So these teenage dances became a wonderful entree for meeting the other Jewish kids in the community. Now, most of the houses in my part of South Dallas, which was South Boulevard, had Jewish families, but they were not exclusive. There were non-Jews in the neighborhood, and I'm happy to say that the relationships were really very amicable. And even at times, one formed close friendships. That was perhaps the exceptional case, but it did happen. One really, in those days, got to know one's neighbors because of several things about Dallas life at that time. First of all, it was hot. Forever it was hot. And so people would go out onto their front lawns and sit out, and people would walk up and down, and you would see a neighbor going by and, come on, have a glass of lemonade, you know, and you really got to know the people in your neighborhood. It was way too hot to be indoors, and if you really wanted to cool off, you went to the White Theater because they had this big sign in front, 72 degrees, air cooled. And that was the big attraction. Not only that, but they changed the main feature 3 times a week. Now, you can imagine, neighborhood theater show would be 2 days, another one 2 days, and then the long weekend where you'd have 3 days to see a movie. Saturday afternoon, the kids congregated there, and you had double feature, you had cartoons, they usually gave away ice cream and all of that for maybe 11 cents. 2 remarkable inventions changed all that neighborliness. The invention of the home air conditioner and television. Once that happened, people stayed home. They cooled off in their privacy of their homes. They didn't walk up and down the street offering lemonade to their neighbors. I've asked myself the question, as we've thought about those times, how did we as Jewish kids feel? Did we feel part of the larger community? Or was there some sense of being other, which has been the case in so much of Jewish history? And I think for myself, I mostly felt part of the community. But still being aware that there were indeed differences. For example, every Jewish kid knew that Myra Chosky had become an executive banker at one of the large downtown banks because he was Jewish. You see, everyone was aware of that because this was a most unusual situation. I can remember some of my friends who used to take the little blue and white tin cans and go around to collect for the Jewish National Fund. And once in a while they would ring the doorbell of a non-Jewish home. Some of these people were gracious, but one reported to me on one occasion that the woman of the house said, "If this will help send all of you back where you came from, I'll be glad to." So, while for the most part I say there was a sense of acceptance, there was also this sense of difference. I was fortunate that my mother inculcated in me a great love of this land. American holiday came along, we put out the American flag in the yard. And I think that made a great difference in the way, as a Jewish kid, I felt about being America, because I was truly at home. And speaking of home, what about all those home services that had disappeared? Do you remember when the milkman would come, bring the milk, walk in, put it in the refrigerator for you? And not only that, but he had a horse-drawn wagon, and as did all the garbage trucks. These were also drawn by horses, and the horses left a very decided aroma up and down the streets. And we used to play ball in the street, and believe me, you were very careful where you stepped. There used to be a knife sharpener that would come around. He would have like a little tricycle, and he would have this grinding wheel. And he would stop. You need any knives sharpened today? I mean, these people came to your homes to do these things.
That knife sharpening surgery as a place across the
There was the chicken farmer who would drive up on his truck, and all these chickens were in these little cages, and your mother would go down and say, I'll take that one. He would then take the live chicken out of the cage, wring its neck. I mean, for the young people here who have grown up with the sterile supermarkets, I mean, this would have been an unheard of event. But for us, when I say wring the neck, I mean literally the head would pop off, and you would see this headless chicken flopping back and forth. You know, it was such a common occurrence, we used to watch it, it seemed kind of funny. I think it would probably make me sick. I just want to address one other issue, because I think the time is getting late. And that had to do with our interaction with the African Americans, or blacks, that lived right in our neighborhood. My kids grew up after desegregation, but they didn't live in a neighborhood where there were any black people. We lived in much more intimate contact. Now, they lived, for the most part, in garage apartments behind the white person's house. And the sad part was that many of these people who rented these little garage apartments wouldn't permit the black person to walk through the front yard to the back of the house. They had to go down the alley, and after a rain, let me tell you, those alleys were quagmires. You can think of these big garbage trucks going up and down the alley, digging ruts, and they were just a sea of mud. It was a tough time for these people. There was only occasionally a youngster that we sort of interacted with, and I can remember we used to have these rubber gun fights. I see Joe back there. He had some wonderful rubber guns. One would take the, make an L-shaped piece of wood. You put a clothespin on the handle, and then you would cut up an inner tube. And did you know that tires used to have inner tubes? And you would stretch it down the barrel of that gun and, release it with the clothespin. And this one black fellow named Sonny, he also made wonderful rubber guns, and he used to give us a hard time. I don't know what most of the men did. They did some work, yard work, but the women were treasures for the Jewish families. Most Jewish families have some kind of domestic help. Some of them stayed with the family for years and years and became like part of the family. My family had our Willie. She was one of the most remarkable ladies that I have ever encountered. She was like a second mother. She hovered over me, and I don't think anybody really deserves unqualified love, but I think I probably experienced that from her. Can you imagine the kind of individual that it takes to love to that extent? Well, these are just a few recollections from days in South Dallas. Thank you for your
When we had our planning meeting for this program, I learned a good story that I'll bet my mother never knew. She's in the audience. I'm not going to point her out, but if you know her, you might want to watch her face. In 1936, my newlywed parents, Bess and Harry Kaplan, went out of town for New Year's Eve. They foolishly told my 20-year-old Uncle Erwin Donsky about their travel plans. Uncle Erwin decided to have his own New Year's Eve party now that he had a place to have it. First, he invited his best friend, Erwin Waldman, who was 18, to the party. Erwin invited 14-year-old Maxine Polikoff. This was their second date. Then the two of them invited all the friends they could think of to come over to the Kaplan's for a wild New Year's Eve party. When my parents got back in town, Uncle Erwin probably convinced them the hurricane season had come a little early. Isidore Waldman was born on Kelly Avenue in South Dallas on November 27, 1918, to Rosa and Abraham Waldman during a flu epidemic. He had 4 brothers, Morris, Sam, Charles, and William, and one sister, Sadie Cohen. His sister Sadie had his name changed from Isidore to Erwin when he entered 1st grade. If you want to know what school was like in the 1920s, ask Erwin. He held a record for being kicked out of every school he attended. And he was known as the boy who could never be quiet. Among the schools he attended were Mirabeau B. Lamar and Corinth and Browder, Colonial Hill on Pennsylvania Avenue, and City Park on Gano. His reputation had preceded him by the time he got to Forest Avenue High School. Frances Garber's sister, Jenny Blumenthal, made a deal with Erwin that if he would go sit in the library instead of attending her class, she would give him a grade of 90. Erwin graduated from Forest Avenue High School as the class orator in 1935 and then attended SMU. He married Maxine Polikoff on November 10, 1940. They have 3 children. Carol Jean married to Howard Cohen. Sherry married to Neil Small. Steve married to Jackie Yaron. 10 grandchildren, 1 great-grandchild, and another on the way. 2? In 1949, Erwin joined his brother Bill to start a partnership in Waldman Brothers Insurance Agency. Erwin is the past president of the NABRIF, the JCC, the City of Hope, AZA, AOTA. He has been chairman of the BBYO Youth Board, regional chairman for the Cotton States for BBYO, and has spent several years on the board of Sheriff Israel. And I'm very pleased to introduce you to Erwin Waldman.
You know, I was just thinking, the gentleman preceding me made a statement about how horrified he thought we might all be with the person who would come by and kill the chicken. There was a gentleman in Dallas by the name of Mr. Fromm, F-R-A-M. He was my model. And he was the chicken. As you can see, that I got nowhere in that spot. Let me start off by welcoming some of my very dear old friends. Fellows that I grew up with, that I've loved all my life, and they're been always a very important part of my life. I'm talking about Sal Barzun, who I grew up with and who we worked with the same company for years. Frank Singer, the same situation, we worked for the same company for the same years. Louis Rubin, who was a little younger, whom I later taught in Sunday school. Marvin Rubenstein, whom I knew up until the day he got married. My neighbor today, Eugene Levin, with whom I live in the same building. Harold Donosky, where's Harold? Harold Donosky, who I also taught in Sunday school, whom I've known all my life, all his life, and his lovely wife. And it thrills me being able to visit with you this evening. The real reason is that we just don't get to see each other enough. But I want to talk about people and places, if you don't mind. I'd like to talk about the old YMHA on the corner of Pocahontas and Park Avenue, if I remember correctly, where we all met in a little gym that when you went in for a crib shot, which is a layup shot, you had to hold one hand in front of you when you hit the wall so you didn't hit your head. Sal and Frank will remember that, and some of you others that I love so much. I remember when I was a little boy, my mother took me to Vista Banks to buy my clothes. Gentleman sitting right here, part of that family that I've known all my life. That was the store that all the Jews attended in Dallas when we were young. I think of a lot of people that I see here tonight. Miriam Guggenheimer, that was her maiden name. Not to say anything about my own lovely family. But those were great days. We had nothing. You think you heard of Park Road? You ever heard of Browder Street? Browder Street, that was my Shtetl. That was the place I grew up with. That was the place that I heard my mama shelf the Schwarze Maid. You know what that means. I'll tell you an episode. My mother sent the maid to Grandhorn's grocery once to pick up some tomatoes. Well, the maid got confused and she called Mom on the phone. And she said, Miss Waldman, this here is shipwreck. Mama said, what's upstairs? You know me, Miss Waldman, this is shipwreck your maid. My mother said, oh, stick the guy. Block area. And if you challenge me, I'll name every one of them. I remember another young man that I taught in Sunday school, whom I deeply love, is a young man whose father left him a plumbing business, and who's here tonight with his lovely wife. Marvin? Bernard. I'm 81. Bernard Lee. I remember when he and his mother lived in a little 4-unit apartment on Irving Street. The Glazer family lived in one part, and Sidney Levitt's family lived in that part of the building. Am I right? Right. Okay. Still got a few things to remember. When I was a young lad, where we lived was adjacent to the cotton mill gang that originated out of further west of us, which were all a bunch of Jew-hating bastards. So my brother Charlie, who was my own personal hero, taught me one favorite phrase, always said to me, don't forget, Schug and Erst. You know what I mean? Get in first. Get in first. And that's how I led my life. So I didn't walk up and down Park Road. If I'd have gotten 3 doors to my house, I was in trouble. But my buddies, Duddy Raskin, Abe Weil, Joe Bach, the Froman family, Sal Levine, who later left Browder Street and moved to Forest Avenue, and all the people that I knew and loved, all came from that little 2-block area, not paid, where you took your life in your hands when you walked out, was Browder Street. Erwin Spelling lived on Browder Street. Abe Weil, who was a very dear friend of mine, who incidentally is no longer here, as is Irving Green, who is no longer here, Harold Shackman, who is no longer here. I can name a bunch.
How about Ginger Rogers?
Ginger Rogers is next door to me, my dear. And my mother called her a stick splitter. Good horse. When we used to meet at we had a special meeting place. Special meeting place where Sal and Frank and I and Sonny Levine and Dudley Raskin and Abe Wall and Sal Shea all met at the corner drugstore on Forest Avenue on Colonial. Is that right, Sal? That's right. Forest Avenue and Colonial, where we all decided which miniature golf course we were going to raise. And some other things that we did. Yeah, Frank.
What street was Mark Collins on? I forgot.
You got a big mouth. My grandson will forgive me tonight. St. Louis Street, Frank. And you know who the manager was, don't you? Elton. That's as far as I'll go on that one. But we had a lot of fun. I went to Shtetl Synagogue as an outcast because I belonged to the small Romanian shul where my father was the Baal Korea. That's a reading man who read the Torah. Where my father was embedded and embellished over there. And every yontif, I would sit by my father, he would hold my hand so I wouldn't leave. And the minute he let go, I'd make a bed out of hell and run to Fair Park to meet my buddies at Shtetl, and we'd bet on the World Series. Those were great times. Then, as it turned out, I got a job with a firm called Lion Auto Parts and Max Manufacturing Company, where again my buddies Sal Barzoon and Frank Singler and about 20 other Jewish boys, we all worked for the tremendous sum, I think, of about $22 a month. It was at that particular era in my life that I had a date with a girl named Mabel Siegel. Mabel Siegel, who is now married to Jaime Massey. She now lives in Houston. And I didn't have a car, and she lived right off Forest Avenue High School. And we were going to go to the White Theater, which we all knew. Everybody in the room that lived in Dallas knew the White Theater. And while we were walking there, she said, you know, there's a new Jewish girl in town who's having a little bit of a party. Let's not go to the show, let's go to her house. She lives right across the street. So I said, okay, so we went over there, and I met this young lady here, who was 14 years old. I was 18 at the time. And I met her mother, and as the evening got later, and I was getting ready to leave, I told her goodbye, and I kissed her on the cheek. That was a mistake. 4 years later, I married the gal, and she gave me a family that is very unique and outstanding. When I have a daughter like Carol Jean, who's married to Howard, my two loves, and then along came Sherry, who's married to Neil Small, my two loves, and standing in the back room there is my son, my Kadishal, Steve Waldman, who is now president of the Jewish Welfare Federation of Dallas, and all the blessings that could befall a family that we could never dream of, all came to Maxine and I and our wonderful family. And you are the ones we are to thank. It is you that we want to serve and have served. And I pray to God, the good Lord, that that will happen. I'd just like to say a little poem, if I may. I hope it's not too late. Try to find it. I I think you will recognize this as I go along on it. I think you'll recognize it. Please bear with me. How lovely to stand here unafraid, with none of the woes of man and maid. I'm glad that I'm not young anymore. The rivals that don't exist at all, the feelings that you're just too tall. I'm glad that I'm not young anymore. No more confusion, no morning after surprise, no self-delusion, that when I'm telling those lies, she isn't wise. And even though love came through the door, the kind that you forever love, and more. Everyone's, the tiny remark that bothers me, the fear that my friends won't like me. I'm glad that I'm not young anymore. The fountain of youth has come and gone. At the Bonaventure, I'll carry on. I've never been so comfortable before. I'm so glad that I'm not young anymore. Shtetl.
Ginger's going to answer all of your questions.
I defer to the experts here if you have questions. Okay. When you get up, and then I ask you to rise and give your question, state your name also, and who you're addressing your question to,